Hey friends, welcome to the School of Hard Knocks with Darcie, a place where we become unstuck from trauma and grounded in our healing. I'm your host, Darcie, and I'm a proud multi-graduate of the School of Hard Knocks. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we never asked for, but here we take those lessons and turn them into healing, strength, and self-leadership. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Just a quick reminder. This podcast shares personal stories and lived experiences. It's not therapy. It's not counseling or legal advice. If you need professional help, please reach out to a licensed provider. Hey, School of Hard Knocks, welcome back. Class is in session. I am here with our Rebuilt series. It is our season in bloom. I'm here with Sarah Nadler. Did I say that right, Sarah?
Yep.
Awesome. Welcome to the School of Hard Knocks.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, let me introduce you guys to Sarah. So Sarah and her husband were living in LA, and in 2018, they had a financial situation happen that caused them to pack up in her husband's 1988 truck with $500 in the bank and take off. They couch surfed for a little while. She jokingly says they graduated eventually to a guest room that she was so excited about. But then she started her own business. So she's going to tell us a little bit of what happened in particular in that first year from going from broke to making her first million. So I'm really excited to hear all about your journey. So take us back 2018. What's going on?
So at the time let's go back even further for a second. 10 years prior to that, I had sold my business. And for the last 10 years, I had been traveling, volunteering my time for nonprofits and causes I believed in, and living on those savings. And like a lot of women, I think in their early 20s, no one told me, hey, you should invest that money. So it was just sitting in like a normal savings account, earning like 0.001% interest. And so, of course, I was running out of cash right around the time when I met my husband, the man who was later to become my husband, I should say. And unfortunately, I ran into a situation where someone had something negative to say about me. Everybody believed her, not me. And I finally just became a very untenable situation. And so I decided to leave. And it was a very impulsive move. I did not do a great job of setting us up for our next chapter. And my husband was like, yep, I'm coming too. And that was that. And so we ended up living in his 1988 Toyota 4Runner truck for about 2 weeks. And it was a wonderful time in the sense of like a nice little road trip, but it was also terrifying because we had $500 at the beginning of those 2 weeks. And as you can imagine, by the end of those 2 weeks, we had a lot less than that.
Yeah.
And we ended up in Oregon near my family, where Ben is also from, and had started from nothing I was 30 years old at the time, right? So that was quite scary.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's the thing. When you say, and I know a lot of people have been stuck in these situations too, where somebody has something to say about something, and some people are so relentless in the pursuit of trying to damage somebody's life, character. It's interesting to me how, as adults in particular, that some people just have this desire and drive, and a lot of it that I have found is just simply out of jealousy. I mean, that looking, seeing themselves in a mirror and knowing that they'd have to put in work in order to reach the level of accomplishment that some people have reached, right? The level of success. So I'm so sorry that that happened to you. I had something similar happen. I just chose not to run away because I'm lame. and I couldn't imagine leaving Wisconsin, and I have 8 siblings, and it's like, but believe me, it crossed my mind. How far can I drive in my Jeep before it runs out of gas, and then maybe consider if I want to go further. So I totally get that. So What was it like? My husband actually had a 4Runner when we first started dating. So I remember that a little bit, nice and cozy in the back. But I like how you said it was scary. I'm sure it was scary for a multitude of reasons, not just the money, but having to sleep in a vehicle and hope that you're safe. Nobody's going to come and creep around.
Yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me. I grew up, I like to say, like kind of an American princess,
Mm.
upper middle class family. My childhood home was 3 stories, like
Yeah.
3-car garage. Like this was a very new experience for me, and it was very humbling. It was also quite scary. My husband took it much better than I did. Obviously, men, there's less chances sometimes of negative things happening to them. So I think that he felt safer than I did, but he'd also done a lot of road tripping in his 20s. He'd done a lot of camping, it was like not as terrifying for him if you ask him how that whole time period went. But for me, it was pretty scary. And for anyone who's kind of gone through that, that like the most frightening part is that you think you've hit rock bottom, but then when you get there, you realize that there is a basement, right? Like it can get so much worse from here. I am not at rock bottom. There could be something worse that could happen if I don't really start changing things around. And I don't know about you, but Darcie, but I have certainly learned the lesson during that time and since that, two people can have a similar negative situation arise in their lives, and you can either use that as an excuse to be a victim, or you can use it as a reason to rise. And whether it was through luck or good fortune or common sense, I really did kind of take that as lighting a fire under me and decide that I was never going to be in that situation again. And decided to launch my second business.
Yeah, I love that. I wrote that down because that's something that I often say because I don't think that people understand that rock bottom does have a basement,
Yeah.
and I've been in the basement and it is terrifying. It is not a good place to be. And it's almost mind blowing because you're like, oh my gosh, I did not realize things could have gotten worse. And then they do. Like
Yeah.
it is a very, like you said, it's an eye-opening experience when you hit that level of I'm never going back to that. Whatever that looks like for that person, I'm never going back to that level of rock bottom again. So now
Yeah.
here you are, 30 years old, and you are about to start your second business. So what's going through your mind here? I mean, there has to be a little bit of anxiousness because of what happened like the first time around, right? But I ain't never sleeping in a 4Runner again for the rest of my life.
And I will say, I think I walked into my second business a little cocky because remember, I had built a business, but it had been 10 years. And so there are a bit of rose colored lenses. I'd forgotten how hard that was. And I'd also learned so much in the 10 years since. I had been an executive in nonprofits. I had raised, over $1 million in fundraising for nonprofits, right? So like I had run advertising teams with over $250,000 worth of ad budget. Like I had so many skills that I could lean on that I had not had the first time I built my first business. And so I think I really walked into that second business quite cocky and un um unsupportedly so. I don't know if that's the word I'm really looking for, but like it was false empowerment. Let's just put it that way. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be in some ways, but in other ways I was quite lucky. I mean, again, I think I do believe to a large degree we make our own luck. I had to come out of my shell a lot and talk to strangers and right, like really pound the pavement. But I was starting a wedding business. And I think that often surprises people that when I say, like, yeah, I started and launched a successful full-time wedding business from the back bed of a 1988 truck, right? Like, I think a lot of times women, and not just women, but, entrepreneurs in general, we tend to feel like we have to have certain things before we can do something, right? Like you have to have money to make money. You have to have a fancy office before you can right? You have to have business cards before you can. No, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of that. I had a couple of, wrinkled clothes that I could put on and some food that I could stay nourished. And that was it. And so I had to pound the pavement at networking events. And, I had never up until that time had a social media presence whatsoever. I didn't even have an account. And so I, learned that was the fastest and cheapest way to promote yourself. So I was jumping on Facebook and learning, how to post and I just drummed up business. And, of course, yes, once I was making money, then I quickly reinvested a lot of that into the type of services and products that I needed in order to scale, for sure. But I think, again, a lot of times that school of hard knocks teaches us that we can build something out of nothing. We don't have to have as many things as we think we need to really get started.
Yeah, and I like that you said that too, because I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years already. So I know that whole, geez, can I really start a podcast if I don't have, the setup? I remember my first interview I did, it was somebody I had met at a lake house retreat the year before. And the podcast episode is over, and she's like, oh my gosh, your background is so cute, like the backdrop that you have. And I'm like, yeah, this. And she's like, oh, that's real? She's like, that's really like, and I said, yeah, it is really real. But if I go all the way back, I had started with Unique. That was my very first, MLM, let's go big, rah, rah, rah. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like it is so much. But I can't go live until I have the, stand and the ring light and my makeup desk. And I remember when I started building a team, I said, do you want to know what I did? I literally took my phone and like one of those big Yankee candles, and I flipped that candle upside down and I balanced my phone on it, prayed because it was on a windowsill, because natural light when you're putting on makeup, right?
Right.
And that's what it looked like. I said my backdrop was my bed and the dog Daisy that I had at that time. That was like my little mascot. So that is exactly, I think we do. We get so caught up because we're trying so hard to keep up with the Joneses immediately. And the
Yeah.
biggest thing I learned from that is don't ever compare your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 20, because
Right.
they started out at chapter 1 before they got to chapter 20. So we do just naturally put all of this pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. And, obviously now I work in finance and I help women with, everything from stop overspending, build your first, savings, start investing. And the same thing happens in personal finance that we all do in entrepreneurship, right? Where women are like, oh, I can't start investing because I don't have a $10,000 saved yet. And I'm like, no, you can go buy a fractional share for $1.
Yeah.
Just start. Or, we're like, yeah, but I won't make much. I'm like, yeah, but you won't lose much either. Why don't you learn the skill first and then
Right,
worry about
right.
having a lot to contribute,
Yeah, I really like this reminder too, because you said when you started this second business that you walked into it cocky. And I think that that's another really important thing to point out, because in so many different things with time, we forget about what had happened the first time. It could be from anything. I mean, how many times have you maybe heard people around you? I know I've heard it. Oh my gosh, I drank so much last weekend. I am never going out and drinking again. And then it's Friday. They're like, let's go. It's like, did you hear what you just said last weekend? Because with time, it's like, that really wasn't that bad. Or this time I'm going to do a lot better. So that to me is so important to point out, because we do that with so many different things in our life. We forget those pain points. We forget the trial that we had gone through the first time. And I think a lot of us enter into new eras a little bit cockier because we forgot with time what we had walked through before.
100%. And again, bringing that back to personal finance, like women who used to overspend and swipe without looking, and then they get comfy with their, I've got an extra $200 every month and I've been just saving that. And when you try to go to that next level, it's like, right, what got you here won't get you there. And sometimes we forget how far we've come, right? And we either get really down on ourselves because we're not at $1 million yet, right? Or we get to a certain level and it's so comfortable compared to where you came from that you just coast. And I've seen women coast for decades, like literally just coast the rest of their lives and forget about these big, huge, beautiful, impactful dreams that they had, right? And so I think it kind of goes both ways, where you can get to a certain level and coast and be comfy, and that's like almost not a good thing to be stuck in your comfort zone. Or we come so far, but then we're so busy chasing the next thing that we forget to pause and kind of celebrate and realize how far we've come.
Yeah, I mean, it really is walking this very fine line of being so aware of where you are throughout the journey. I know for me, I stuck with it for a long time. I mean, I was with Unique for 8 years and I shifted over to pharmacy and I was with them for over a year. And then I thought, you know what, maybe I just need to be doing something on my own. I don't know if I want to keep doing this thing like how I'm doing. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's so wonderful when people find their way. But for me, it wasn't serving me the way that it was before. But,
Yeah.
I found joy in just being a part of the journey and being like consciously aware of, okay, so I did not make my first $1 million in network marketing, but I met some really incredible people. And my
Yeah.
husband and I got to take, a Bahamas cruise. And we got, so there's like different things that we got to do together or experience together or people we got to meet. And you're right. A lot of us are either speeding through because we're trying to get to the end. Well, what's at the end? Now what are you hoping and wishing and praying for?
Yeah.
Or we are like, you know what? Maybe this is just good for me and I'll
Yeah.
just stay here for the rest of my life. So it is fascinating that there are, two drastic levels like that. When you do
Yeah.
have people coming to you that are maybe in that kind of, mindset, either I need to get to my goal right now, or you know what, Sarah, I think I'm pretty good where I'm at. What are some of the things that you help people understand in those moments?
So for the women who are kind of coasting a little bit, I often find, again, as I said, that I had experienced, right? Sometimes that's actually a false empowerment where she really knows she wants to retire on time, or she really knows that she wants to be living a different lifestyle, but she's come so far. It's almost like we've built this house of cards underneath us, and it doesn't feel strong enough that we can leave something behind in order to get to that next level. And so we're so obsessed with keeping everything kind of within the status quo that we won't shift what needs to be shifted to get to that next level. And when I find a woman is kind of getting stuck in that place where she's holding deeply onto a comfort zone that isn't really serving her ultimate goals, the primary thing I lean into is what I call the money magnetism method, because there are certain attitudes, certain limiting beliefs that we sometimes can just cling to so hard because they used to be survival. And so they still feel like survival today because of how far they got us, right? And it's just another example of what got you here won't always get you there, right? And so we use money magnetism method to actually crack some of these limiting beliefs and that are holding her back from actually taking that next step. Oftentimes she knows that she needs to get to that next level. Sometimes she even knows what steps she should be taking, but they feel so out of reach or they feel so scary because they're so different than the successful actions that have gotten her this far. And that there's a lot of power in following your successful actions, right? But there's also a huge glass ceiling that we as successful women sometimes hit up against, where, whether it be lack of leadership skills, whether it be negative money habits, et cetera, things that got us this far, but are actually now the exact bottlenecks and the exact things holding us back from getting to the next level. So again, it really comes down to looking internally and doing that deep inner work so that you can identify what are the things that are making me literally a negative magnet, right? Like I am repelling opportunities, repelling the people that should want to partner with me at the level I'm at, right? I'm repelling people, opportunities, and wealth and money away from me, and shift that magnetism so she becomes the magnet for the type of opportunities, wealth, investors, and things that she actually wants to be experiencing. And it really is, it's an inner work piece that I think often gets left behind when we start talking about math and the numbers and here's how much you need to contribute every month to your 401k.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of people, women in particular, that we want it, but when you're in a spot that almost feels safe, then it has to be the discussion of it's not unsafe to reach forward and to do the things. It's just that kind of scary feeling. But then you relate it back to other things like I didn't want to fly. I literally did not fly in an airplane until I was like 35, 36 because of my fear of heights. It was so bad.
Wow.
I legit remember walking onto the plane and still turning around and looking at my business partner going, I can still get off, right? Like we haven't actually laughed. And she's like, calm down, breathe. You're going to be totally fine. And I was, and it turns out I freaking love it. Like on the way home, I actually paid extra for a window seat. And then I was so mad at myself. I wasn't mad, I was disappointed. I was disappointed that I allowed that fear to take so many opportunities away from myself and my husband because I was too afraid to just trust everything is safe and everything is going to be okay. And it took, now I can't wait to keep going. Like, I just love it. I just love to fly. So that's what I always think of when people are like, it's safe. Sometimes getting that feeling of just jump and do it is really the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, none of your growth happens in your comfort zone, right? We have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in order to grow. And that's true, even as a child. Like, you didn't get your first teeth without pain, right? Teething is a very deeply uncomfortable experience. So is childbirth. So are so many things that women experience. And I think we sometimes forget in the modern era where we have so much coming before our eyes every day on social media about ease and passive income, and it's all going to be so flowy and simple and easy. We forget that it takes grit to run a business. It takes hard work to get ahead, right? And yes, hard work does not mean you have to always trade time for dollars, but it is hard work to build a life that you want to lead, right? And so anybody who says otherwise, honestly, they're just selling something. And we have to be willing to step outside of that and face the reality of what it takes to actually get ahead,
Yeah. So let's talk about it. You started this second business. Tell us all about it.
So it was a wedding business, like I said, back in Portland, Oregon. I held it for about 3 years, and then I sold it in actually January 2020, right before COVID hit. So it was very good timing. And truth be told, it was fantastic. It was a wonderful experience. And by the time I sold that second business, I was only a few years into my 30s, right? I had quite a few women asking me, how did you do that, right? How are you able to build that so quickly from where you came from? And that's when I decided that I wanted to become a business consultant, right? I wanted to get into coaching and consulting. And I had never had a job, right? If you think about, look at my history, I had built one business, sold it, volunteered for 10 years, built a second business, sold it. I never worked for corporate. So I had no idea how to become a coach or consultant. And so I did a little bit of research on Google, looked up the name of a consulting firm in Portland where I lived. And then I walked in the door with no resume, wearing jeans and flip-flops. I said, "Are you hiring?"
Brave.
And the woman at reception looked at me like I was nuts, which I probably was. She asked me if I had a resume. I said no. And I was standing there trying to kind of explain to her why I wanted to become a consultant. And the boss happened to walk by behind me, and he heard me say, I've built and sold 2 successful businesses. And he kind of did a double take and went, "You have sold 2 businesses?" And I wasn't offended because I understood, like, I walked in, off the street. I'm 5 feet tall. Who's this little chick, And he's like, "Come with me." And I went into his office, and he did a little interview with me and hired me on the spot for a paid internship. And that was my introduction to the coaching and consulting world. And yeah, so by the end of that first year, at the same time, right, I launched a blog. I started sharing what I had learned on a blog. And by the end of that first year, I was making more money on my blog and coaching women on the side than I was in this paid internship that I was doing. So I quit, and that became my full-time business. And that year I made 10 times more money than I had ever made in my life. And it was also the year I spent my way into $20,000 of credit card debt. So that was sort of my beginning journey of me learning about finance, was the mistakes I was making, because I just kept earning more money and then spending more, and then earning more money and spending even more. And I was just going into crazy amounts of credit card debt for no reason. Just, food and travel and shoes.
Yeah.
So that kind of launched me on this journey that I'm on now of just learning about personal finance. And so very quickly, I went from coaching women on business to, you can have a successful business like me and still be broke. So why don't we focus instead on your personal finances? And that's when everything changed. And within 7 years of that original date of me being homeless, I had made my first million.
That is so exciting. And the tenacity to keep going, right? First of all, but to just be led by whatever your heart and soul is feeling. Like, I don't feel like this is right for me anymore. I think I'm going to try something different. And the way that opened up different doors for you is super cool. So if we have women listening, which we obviously do, and they're interested, they're thinking, yep, that's kind of my issue, is I want to do, some of these things, but I don't even know where to get started. How does somebody become a client of yours, and what are some of the things that they can look forward to you helping them with?
Sure. So I have kind of 2 entry points for women depending on what stage they're in, right? Personal finance is obviously very personal thing. And for a lot of clients, they come to me like very similar to where I was in around 2022, 2023, of high earner, overspender, off track for retirement, want to catch up, want to be living a very different lifestyle than they are now. Maybe they are corporate executive and they love what they do, but they work way too many hours, right? Or they're entrepreneurial, they've got a business that's a full-time business, it's supporting them, they've got a team, but again, they're working way too many hours, or they feel like there's a need to pivot, but the business is not what they want to be doing anymore. And so usually women come to me at sort of these transitional points of recognizing that something needs to change, not knowing how they're going to fund that change. And that's really where I specialize inside my Map Her Millions Accelerator. So this is a one-on-one, very high-touch program. And I often have women just jump right inside. I've had total strangers come inside this community, and it's wonderful because we have a 100% ROI guarantee, which is very rare to find these days in the coaching space. And women come in, they work with me, they work with my team. We have an attorney on the team, we have a funder on the team who helps you with, credit detox and helping you find investors to fund that next level for you. And personally, I work with them on the budgeting, saving, and investing side, and just educate them on how we're actually going to get them to where they want to go. They get a completely custom plan, and it's a lot of fun. We make a lot of money in that program. Obviously, everybody's results are different, but we have had 7 women inside the community hit $1 million a year or more. So that's been a lot of fun over the last few years. The other way that women sometimes come into my world is they are newer entrepreneurs, maybe still struggling a little bit to make ends meet. And oftentimes working with me one-on-one just doesn't really make sense, right? That investment doesn't really make sense for where they're at. And so I do have the Multiply Her Money membership, which is a really great low-cost way to just kind of start to learn some of the methods that I used to get out of credit card debt and start making more money in my business. And it helps them with the personal finance side, as well as just the marketing and sales side of a business. Because as you probably know, it's impossible to make money and learn how to manage it properly if you're not making any, right? You can't budget with nothing, right? You can't save and invest if you don't have money. So Multiply Her Money is really for those women who are a little bit further behind still on their journey. They're still working towards cash flow. They're still working towards making more than they spend. And it's a great community. Again, we've had a lot of successes in there. We've had a lot of women who paid off all of their debt, who built successful businesses or successful side hustles in there. So those are kind of the two main ways that women come to me and work with me.
That's very exciting. And, you know, the thing for me with wanting to get out of corporate America, first of all, I just was not enjoying some of the things that were happening at the last position I held. But a lot of my drive is exactly what you said, which is time freedom. Time freedom is such a big thing. And that's why so many people, women in particular, do get into a network marketing type of thing or want to do their own thing because, man, you just start to realize how fast that time really does go. And when you're putting everything you have into trying to build something and then you're not seeing the return on it, it's like, you get so stuck. Like, what do I do? Do I just go back to work and say, forget it? At least I have an income coming in? Or do I keep pushing because the time freedom is so important?
Yeah. And honestly, I have definitely experienced slow seasons in my businesses, right? But at the end of the day, I always knew I am meant for more than where I am today. And I remember it's happened only a couple of years ago, Darcie. I finally sat down one year to look at my goals, right? I like to do like an annual goal planning, vision boarding session, right? It's a lot of fun. I sat down and I realized I had checked off every single goal I had set for myself. And it was actually a really interesting experience to go, okay, what now? It's like, I'm not even 40. This can't be all there is to life. And what I think is really beautiful about the community that I built inside Fierce Feminine Finance brand is a lot of the women who we seem to naturally attract, when they hit that point of like, yeah, I got all the travel, like, okay, yeah, I traveled 4 months out of last year. We've got about 5 or 6 months of travel set for 2026, right? Like, we got the travel bug out of the way. We bought the cars we wanted to buy. We have the home we want to live in. Like, I own a 6-acre farm, and like all those things that you want. When you check all those boxes, what comes after that is usually, for the women we attract, like me, they have the same thought I did at that time, which is impact. I want to change lives. I want to see the end of hunger in my lifetime. I want to see the end of drug abuse in my lifetime. And we start to actually be able to expand across the different parts of life, right? And like feel like we can actually impact earth. And I think that's when you finally find what you were put on this earth to do. Some people are lucky, they find it earlier than that and they're doing it all along. But a lot of us find what we were actually put on this earth to do when the money noise and the stress of how do I pay my bills lifts off. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I see what kind of person I really am. And so that is what really is obviously that's the first milestone for clients, is like get them to that point. But also it's a beautiful thing to see the kind of new goals that come out of you when you hit that point and you realize that the world is your oyster and you can do whatever the heck you actually feel called to do.
Yeah, and it is interesting because I mean, I never thought I was going to be a podcast host. I never even listened to podcast. I mean, I know it's so crazy, but I mean, I just didn't, it just wasn't my thing. And then it just weighed on me that same as you. Like, this is such a
Yeah.
great way to make an impact. This is
Yeah.
such a great way to like help myself heal through some of the things that I've gone through, but then give other
Mhm.
people the platform to talk about what they've gone through, how they've found success, the things that they're doing. Because I always say this at the end of the podcast, there's more than enough room at the top of the mountain for everybody. You know, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people have gotten really competitive in network marketing spaces in particular, where it just becomes this independent drive for you and your team to be super secretive about all the tools that you're using to try to find success. And it's like
Yeah.
there's so much opportunity out there for everybody. I mean,
Right.
power in numbers, you know?
Yeah.
So if we can just support each other and encourage each other to do the best that we possibly can, get out of our comfort zone a little bit. You know, I
Yeah.
like that whole sometimes you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable thought, because
Yeah.
that's just the reality of it. So
Totally.
I love it. I love this conversation. I think it is so great. And I know that there's going to be women that are listening that, you know, are like, yes, definitely, this is something I'm interested in. So to reach you, it's just on all social media, Sarah Nicole Nadler.
That's right. Anywhere you
Okay.
can find me online, that's my handle.
So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the whole
TikTok.
deal.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us today and giving me all of your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a really interesting conversation. I love the angle, and I hope that your listeners really get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, School of Hard Knocks, you know what to do. When you're done listening to this episode, go and find Sarah on all of the platforms. Give her a follow, like and love on her stuff, share her things. Because, like I say, there's more than enough room at the top of the mountain for everybody. So let's get everybody up there. And as always, healing is always possible when you're walking with God. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I'd like to thank you for sharing your time with me today. And I'm so proud of you for stepping into your healing journey. Please share this with every single person that you know. I'm here to make the biggest impact possible, and I can only do that with you by my side. I hope you hit that follow button and you save me to your library so you never miss an episode. We just took another break out of your wall, and remember, with God, healing is always possible. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.